Courageous authenticity is top dead center for a reason at the top of the model. Let me give you some of the history on it. My early mentor, and I consider this a great privilege, blessing and privilege in my life, was to be mentored by Peter Block. And specifically, I was mentored on his work that eventually became the book, The Empowered Manager, which was about courageous authenticity. How do we reclaim our power in the midst of the hierarchy? How do we tell the truth when it's risky? And he started out with kind of approaching it as a skills thing. And it started out as positive political skills at work. How to be political in a positive way, but what are the skills involved? And he worked that. And then he ran smack into caution, which is the bottom half of the profile, fear. And it was, how do I tell the truth? If I say that, I'll get shot. And the way I can say that and survive in the organization. And Peter was pretty fierce about that rumor and challenged it. So how do we say it in a great way? And it really then, when he dove deep into caution, he realized that there had to be something bigger than caution and fear. So what do you love more than your fear? What's bigger than the risk? What matters more than the risk? And if you haven't solved that for yourself, then you're left with a play not to lose game. And that takes on various forms of manipulation. I'm disguising what I mean, or not saying what I really mean, or overemphasizing the positives and not mentioning the negatives. I'm different ways of trying to influence that are indirect. And this becomes problematic when what really makes teams function really, really well is when they can have really difficult conversations with each other about important things like direction of the company, strategy, vision, culture, so on, and have those conversations cleanly and in a great way, and do it with real respect and compassion. And Peter was a master at this, and it was he lived it. And I'll never forget when I decided to go out on my own and start my own consulting business. I was young. I called Peter. I was already in a relationship with him. I said, guess what? I'm going out on my own. His first comeback to me was, when do you want to start? And what do you mean? He says, well, I'm doing a public workshop next week. You want to come co-train it with me? I had no business co-training with Peter Block at this point in my career. No, come on out. I'll pay your way. So I go out there and he gives me some stuff to do in the workshop. And at one point I walk up to do this piece. It was on vision. And the whole room groaned like, ugh, who's this guy? We came to see Peter. We don't want to listen to this guy. And they were right, actually, because I really sucked. And I was so nervous and so trying to impress that I was like fumbling over it. I could hardly make it work. I finally got him in a task, and I'm walking back like this to Peter, looking at him. He's in the back of the room, and he goes like this. And I went, I know. And then, see, this is direct. This is like, let's not kid around here. That he said he did this, and then he goes, I know you're better than that. What happened to you up there? But let's be clear, that really didn't work. Every conversation with him was like this. There's balance of heart, and we're going to talk in our next theme is caring connection, deep connection and caring and support with, let's be clear and direct about what's really going on here, including on the seeing through and underneath it. He goes, I know you're better than that. What's happening inside you, which is directly going into the inner game. Let's talk. And that I spent years in that tutelage, and then years working with teams and senior teams where 90% of the time the issue was they're not able to have those kind of conversations and have them in a great way. So that became an essential competency in the top half of the circle. It embodies everything. You have to kind of put everything together to stand that way. You have to work your doubts and fears, which is the underpinnings of the reactive. So you have to get clear on how I might go reactive in a difficult conversation. You have to get clear about what really matters, which is purpose and vision. And you have to work self-awareness and emotional intelligence. There's all, and then you have to get skillful, which is interpersonal competence and caring and relating. So this is where heart and power meet, and it's telling truth with power and love. And so it's top dead center for that reason. And it's there also because so many times in our work as consultants, that's what we're helping them do, is get better at those kind of conversations. So it's one of my favorite dimensions, and it's one that takes a lifetime of learning to really get good at it.
It's really good for me, Bob, to listen to that and reflect on the 20 years of learning that I've had being your partner, and then what connected into that point when we came together. And courageous authenticity, that language has been the centerpiece of the work that I and we have done in the world from the very beginning. So what the profile, the leadership circle, allowed for us to do is where it sits in the center is point to the importance of what does it mean to not have an organization that allows for, encourages what we affectionately used to call an on-the-table culture, where we can put on the table what's true and what's real, and what one of my early teachers, a gentleman by the name of Will Schutz, called the truth option. So we spend a significant portion of our time not able to speak our truth for all the reasons Bob just mentioned. And when we're withholding that, or we're in an environment that keeps that from happening, then we don't get to bring our full selves to work. And the organization, the business, the agency, whatever it is, doesn't get the value out of the individuals, individually or collectively, because we diminish who they are and what they can bring, which is going to contribute, oh, by the way, to making us more effective and better. Not telling the truth, not putting it on the table, withholding, not being able to, the fear, all of those things means that we don't tap the potential that exists because of human beings working together and what it means to be radically human. So if we can't do that, then we're missing out on a significant portion of what people coming together in common cause, purpose, wanting to accomplish something that's bigger than itself, it keeps it or prevents it from happening in a level that it will and could when this is present. So, yeah, so many examples because of the way I've lived my life, but I think that's why entering into that so important. Significant portion of our work from the very beginning is getting people to be able to be honest and truthful with each other. How is it that we can create an environment where you can come undefended and be able to hear something that may actually not be something that you want to hear or even know about yourself and or the organization? You're a leader, and the last thing you want to hear is you're doing a job that's not a great job. All of that. So the courageous authenticity piece, being able to tell the truth. Well, she used to say, well, bottom line is that it just works. It just makes things a lot simpler, because if you spend all your time in a meeting not telling the truth and not putting on the table what's actually going on, you've never had a meeting that gets anywhere. You're just trying to make everybody feel okay and make sure you don't disrupt. And as Bob used to say, and then you go to the bathroom and you're sitting in the stall and you hear what's really going on because they're over washing their hands, talking to each other. Well, that's not a way to run a business or lead an organization. So went into Texas Air Corporation. This goes way back. At that time, Frank Lorenzo was literally taking the regulated industry airlines, regulated industry of air transportation here in the U.S. He was buying up airlines, right? Continental Airlines, Eastern Airlines. I mean, this goes back, but they were bringing them all together. And Frank was viewed in the industry as, you know, he literally had to have security with him all the time to protect him. So we brought together 300 leaders at Eastern Airlines, which at that time had been in business in a long time within the industry, down in Miami, Florida. When we arrived that day at the organization, it was inside of a barbed wired ringed compound. Had to get through 3 levels of security to get inside. And the mechanics union had gone on strike, and they weren't just on strike, they were in a fight. And so they had to keep things so secure inside this organization, inside where they're doing this work, that you had to get through that. We brought 300 leaders to have this meeting together. Frank Lorenzo walks in. I've got some PhD psychologist out of Harvard that I'm co-facilitating with. I'm like 29, 30, 31 years old. And he stands up in front of the room and he said, today we're going to create an on-the-table conversation. This is on the table. This is a culture that you all are not used to, and it's going to be a lot of work. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to actually talk about what's really going on here and why it's going on the way it's going on and what's happening and how we're going to fix it. And what I can tell you is that this will not be resolved. This organization will not be able to succeed and survive. You're not going to get the business results that you need to get unless you can, our words, be courageously authentic. And we're going to eliminate every fear and all the safety associated with that right now. So there will be no violations of someone speaking their truth. When you speak your truth, it's going to be accepted, it's going to be heard, it's going to be listened to, and there's no ramifications for it. That will not happen. So we're going to establish an environment of safety, and we're going to learn how to talk with each other and speak the truth. There's like 10, 11 people at a table. We spent the entire day and the next day, 24 hours, 12 hours a day, learning how to tell the truth and make it okay. And by the end of the second day, They knew what they had to do to turn it around. And they went about it. They solved and settled the strike. Everything started to lay itself out. And it was unbelievable to sit in a room at a table where, for the first time in sometimes a 30-year career, you were able to say, well, that's not what's going on here. Here's what's going on. Let me tell you what I know. And this is what's happening to us. And if we don't change this, if we don't take this on, not dissimilar to the conversation we were having earlier, Sarah, it's going to continue. And we have to listen to each other. We have to respect each other. We have to love each other. We have to be in service of the other, as the other has to be in service of us. And everything changed. Everything changed. They hadn't been able to tell each other the truth for 30 years. That's a heavy use of time and energy and resource to not tell the truth, to actually have to withhold or lie to be okay. So as much as we'll use this to say, hey, it's just common sense, it is first and foremost not easy to do. And most of our environments, our cultures, work against it instead of work towards it. And that has to change. That's what it means to be courageously authentic, is that we're able to actually, with power, hold the space where we can speak our truth and we can learn from each other, because otherwise we don't get to come together and create and perform in the way that's possible. I don't, I mean, Bob, am I missing how important and how basic this is?
Fundamental.
I mean, by the way, it was still a armed encampment when we left, and none of that had changed. But I never realized that you could go through that many levels of security and actually call it work, so that you could be safe. But that's what had happened to that organization. That's what had happened to Eastern Airlines at that point. They had boiled it down because they never were able to come together and speak their truth. They boiled it down into warfare. You quit communicating with each other, you quit interacting, the next choice is that.
I once was working with a senior HR team, and we worked a year on this with them, multiple sessions and deep into the reactive, using the profile and so on. And I was in my last meeting with them at the end of the year, and I was just kind of hoping this meeting would just coast along. And, it's like they got into a really difficult issue, and the leader of the group comes in and here's what I think, and here's what I think we ought to do about it, and da 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 da. And the whole group goes, "Yep, you're right. Let's go." And we move on to the next task, and they're on to the next topic. And about 5 minutes into that topic, one of the members of the team says, "I just checked in with myself, and I realized I'm bored. I'm checked out." And I got bored in the last conversation, because the senior leader's name was Joe. Joe, you came in what felt like to me from your mind made up and a kind of high control drive. And that triggered my pleaser, and I went quiet and I acquiesced to the decision. And now that I think about it, I don't actually agree with the decision we made. And Joe said, "You're right, I did, didn't I? Man, that's an old pattern. I came right in on my high horse, telling you guys the way it ought to be." We can go back and revisit that conversation. They went back and did so. Everybody had more to say, and they made a different decision that they all felt good about. Now, in that, you can hear the interplay, the kind of mastery with I'm self-aware of what's happening in me in the moment. I'm also able to notice and manage my reactive tendencies, and different people have different tendencies. One comes in from high drive, high push on it. Somebody else goes, okay, there's no room for me in this conversation, and they back out. And then you're into agreeing to something you don't really agree with. And so this is where the whole profile can come together, um,
At the center point.
right at the center point.
I mean,
And it
it's
was all done with great respect. There was no blaming and no edge. Like you did it again, Joe. No, it was just you did this. There's what happened to me. And this is critical. I don't want to get into a whole teach here, but when we did the scaling leadership work and we had leaders describe, the most effective and least effective leaders, the high creative and high reactive, one of the big differentiators was listening. Top of the list. I listen well, the high creative leaders. And listening at its best is I'm treating your position with the respect it deserves, even if I disagree with you. I'm taking it in. And I'm also open to being influenced by it. So it's not just I'm listening to you as a kind of prep for how I'm going to counter your argument. It's like, no, I'm really taking it in. And then it might actually change my mind. And so that kind of respect and listening to the other person's position is critical here. The other thing that I think helps us see that the key here is to get courage and compassion together. Courage without compassion is aggression, and compassion is a high form of courage. These two things, when they go together, create this courageous authenticity. And so we move toward compassion and this kind of respectful listening when we see our part in the problem. If I don't see that I'm a part of the problem, then I'm in blame. You're the problem. We see this a lot on teams. The self scores are all high. I'm really high creative. My feedback peer scores, which means us giving feedback to each other, are all low, which means you're all the problem. I'm not the problem. And so,
profile, Bob. I was just curious.
yeah. So when everything changes, when I see that, oh, we've been in a difficult conflict, and here's how I've been showing up, or here's what I've been doing that contributes to keeping that alive or making the problem worse or intractable. And when I can see that and own it, uh, and really listen to your perspective, now we're in a very different place. And so it's kind of the capacity to tell the truth about current reality, tell the truth about our vision, to tell the truth about our differences, tell the truth about the harsh realities that we might be up against, and do that with respect and a kind of compassion for the other that we're not so different. Here's my part of it. You're up against this harsh reality. I have my own that I'm up against. Let's talk. So it's a very uh, uh, powerful way to be in conversation, and it's very settling when you're in it. You when you're really in it, you don't feel fear because you're in kind of in a zone of kind of a deeper dimension of ourselves where we're just being honest.
When you're
And
really in it collectively,
yeah,
when
and
you're the
feel
only one
safe.
in it,
Oh, then it's like, okay,
when you're the one in the room that actually is looked to as the, oh yeah, Sarah's going to tell the truth. Thank heavens for Sarah. So we in all teams will look at a team, and you're going to have someone high score on courageous authenticity, and the organization, the team, actually relies on that individual or those few individuals that when no one else will say what needs to be said, they know Sarah will.
right.
And it is considered to be one of the most important things that can happen in order for a team or an organization. Because otherwise, in the way Bob described it, what we do is not tell the truth, not put it on the table, not have those conversations, and everybody ramps up their delusions. That doesn't get anything done because you're not working on what actually needs to happen. So we're going to the side of it instead of going directly to it. And, the net in here is I love this combination courageously authentic. So when we bring together who we are authentically with courage in a way that we can speak our truth, then we're bringing our whole selves, and that benefits the entire organization, the entire business, everyone, because we're getting the highest value. The inherent potential is manifest into reality. Well, the play out here, and I really appreciate the way that you're framing, Bob, and the experience in here is that we create cultures where it's not okay to speak up. It's not okay to tell the truth. Last night, I had a conversation with one of our really senior practitioners and the work that she'd been doing inside this organization. And she had the entire 30 the top leaders in the room and the senior person in the room. They all agreed that they needed to put it on the table. They needed to talk and have their truth out there and say what needs to be said and have that. And this is safe. And that's who we want to be as a culture. The next day, the most senior leader went around the room individually and looked at, as an example, the head of human resources and said, "Why'd you say that? Where did that come from? I want to understand that. You were wrong." Guess when she's going to speak up again? Or he, or them. So this is both critical and fragile. And if we don't pay attention to it and create the kind of environment, then we'll be dependent upon the truth tellers that are willing to speak up and say the truth regardless of what cost. We have to take the cost out. If you can't speak your truth, if you can't tell it the way it is, and oh, by the way, you might be wrong, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't find out. So, I just don't know anything else that makes a bigger difference. Sit in a 3-hour meeting and frame it this way. It's great to be with you today. I'm sure glad nobody actually spoke the truth. Let's have another productive meeting next week. Same time, same place. Let's do it on Monday. Another 3 hours. I got all the time in the world for that. And then everybody scrambles out of the meeting and goes to the one person they trust and have the conversation that didn't take place. Biggest waste of time, biggest waste of resources, biggest use of resources and energy into something that doesn't work.
Bill, you said we got to take the cost out, and I agree. The flip side of that is we're looking for a safe place to be great, and there isn't one.
That's true.
And so when the boss comes back and says, "I want to know where that came from," with that kind of aggressive tone, and because you're wrong, that's when the conversation starts.
That's when it gets more courageous.
Now, how do I step into my center and continue to stand there and speak the truth with the same respect and compassion that we talked about, but not go away and say, "Well, I'll never do that again." Peter Block was once in a large meeting with an extended leadership team, and somebody stood up to speak about their position on something, and the CEO just took him down in front of the whole group. Very aggressively. Well, after the meeting was over, Peter was on the elevator going upstairs with this man and somebody else, and this man was saying, Well, I'll never do that again. I had my head handed to me. And Peter looked at him and said, your head still looks attached to me. All I saw was a boss get angry in there. So he was not denying that we need to create safety culture, but also, if you want to do that, there are moments of courage that are required to do that, and you're not going to create that without moments of courage. And so, just because you get bruised on the first round doesn't mean the game is over. And so this is where you have to reclaim your power and stay in it and make at least a few good faith tries until you realize that's not wanted here. And then you have choices around that.
Couldn't agree more, Bob. And I think what you described really well is how consequential this is. It's high consequence. So high consequence in a way that works for us or works against us. And wow, you see it in every part of society all the time. I mean, this doesn't just happen in organizations and businesses. This happens in across all society. We don't want to hear from each other, unfortunately. What's your truth? And find the middle ground that's going to make all the difference when it can. And that comes from understanding where it is you are and where you're coming from and what that means. And we're talking about with high regard. So it's an incumbent upon all of us that we have high regard for the individual. That's not always there, or for the team. And we have to create that over time. But this is all about us learning how to really come together as human beings and capitalize on what it is that we bring to the world that can make such a big difference. And this is one of the key factors that allows that to happen. And Bob is so right. It's not without courage, and it's not always safe. And in fact, I'd say the majority of the time, it doesn't even feel safe to me when it is safe. So, you know what? I spent 20 years being hired because I was the one that would come in the organization and tell them the truth. I remember thinking, how did I end up in this position? Are you kidding me? I'm a freaking introvert. And I don't like to talk anyway. And now what I sell and what I do is I come in and speak the truth so others can also. Whether we're talking about, Bob on his assessment when he was inside the healthcare organization as an internal practitioner and having the conversation with his coach. And she said, well, actually, Bob, you're the problem. I mean, that's there for all of us. It's courageous authenticity. It allows us to learn that we will not be able to become self-aware in the way that we need to without the willingness for someone to actually speak truth to us. Wow, what a wonderful virtuous cycle when we understand it. It doesn't have to be a vicious cycle.
This conversation has been largely at what I would call the creative to high creative level of it. There's an integral level that gets even more powerful. And it has to do in part with this owning my contribution. But as I get more practiced at that and dropping into how might I get reactive and so on, I start to really see the shadow side of myself, the parts of myself that want revenge, for example, that don't care, that would do you harm. Um, these are in all of us, usually pretty buried. And so the integral part of the integral move is that I start to hold more of the full complexity of myself. I can hold my dark and my light. And as I am able to hold more of what we would call, quote, dark, which is actually contracted light in shadow, when we start to be able to embrace that more, we stop projecting it. I stop making you the enemy. You see this going on all the time in our
everywhere.
politics. And I recognize that we're not so different. You have your way of showing up that triggers me, and I have the same thing in me that I don't want to face. And so I project it on you and I blame you. And then we're in the dance of enemies. And, Gorbachev shows up at Reykjavik and says, I'm here to deny you of an enemy. I'm here to deprive you of an enemy. And that's an integral move. That's a very high level of understanding that what I see in you as a problem is also in me.
Yeah.
The thing that happens in this move is I start to notice that the reason we're in a deep and long term embedded conflict is because my position is partial. If I had the whole solution, we wouldn't keep going round and round on this. So I actually enter into conversations with, yes, here's where I stand, but I'm so open because I know that's not the whole thing. And I'm looking for a higher synthesis. And I need my quote enemy or opponent in order to come to that synthesis. And this moves us into an even deeper process than telling our truth. We can move into what we call authentic dialogue, which is dropping in together and sort of working through all of these projections and what we think we know until we get into the unknown and sitting there together and being informed together, learning together at the edge of our unknowing. But you can't, and this is, you can't get there without going through this ability to really be authentically courageous in the way that we've been talking about, because that is, at its essence, it's nonviolent. How could I violate you when you are me? We're not so different, you and I. So as you move into this later stage of it, it becomes nonviolent communication and a kind of platform on which peace can break out, truth can find us together. And that's a very high form of this courageous authenticity.
You work your way through these levels. That's part of the reason we come into the world is to develop over a lifetime. As we talk about in scale and leadership, I am the project for a lifetime. We are. And it's a lifetime of development. What Bob just described in a beautiful way is integral, informed by unity. And
Yeah.
what that really looks like and plays out. And when I put that in personal, most basic terms for you, and I think about the conversation we've been in here today. So, I made a pretty good leap in stage when I can actually have sympathy and feel sorry for you. Make another leap in stage where I can have empathy and I can put myself in your shoes. I actually can put myself in your shoes and I can be empathetic. Narcissists don't have capacity for empathy. Think about not having the capacity for empathy. So sympathy, feel sorry for you. Yeah, I really feel sorry for you. Well, that's helpful. Thank you. Appreciate that. Empathy, I can put myself in your shoes. I can actually understand what you're going through because I can do that. Compassion is I am you.
Yeah.
So when it is that what happens to you happens to me, we are one. We're talking about an integral move. And the difference there between putting myself in your shoes and understanding what you're going through, and we're going through it together because if it happens to one, it happens to all. As we talked earlier, Sarah, you can start to see what we're knowing as a society and learning is that until we get to the point where we have the capacity to work in those levels of higher consciousness and higher form of leadership, you know, we won't have the difference that we want to make in the world. And it's starting to happen. I'm grateful for that. But wow, what a difference in relationship and conversation when we're coming at it from the way that Bob and I were just talking about it. Everything changes when I change. That's the way that it plays. And last week, Bob, one of our Unity Academy 2 weeks ago, participants, and I've been mentoring and spending some time with. He told me about going home to see his dad and his younger brother. He hadn't been home for quite a while. His mother passed away a year and a half ago. The loss of his life. I mean, close to his mom. His dad and he had been in an ongoing conflict forever. Every conversation they got into, every time they were together, it ended up in this conflict. This. And that afternoon, they had a great time together that evening. He and his brother and his dad went to dinner. And at the end of the conversation, his dad looked at him and said, that's the best interaction you and I have ever had in our entire lives. What happened? What changed? What changed is he knew that they were one. And the compassion took it completely out of the conversation of the conflict. It took it into a unity conversation. And he said the familiar system, that system, no more powerful system than that for all in the world, everything changed in that moment, in that relationship. Okay, well, there it is. So, great way to have a conversation about courageous authenticity today. Courageous, courage, authentic, those two. Wow, what a beautiful thing.
You have to bow to the great ones here. Jesus, love your enemy, do good to those that hurt you. Take the log out of your own eye first so you can see clearly enough to be in the conversation with your neighbor. These are integral, informed by unity principles in action. And of course, Gandhi picked them up.
That's what I was thinking about.
And in the way that he was deeply moved by the first, the New Testament. And
Martin Luther, same thing.
and King picked it up, and that quote that I mentioned was on King's at his center. How can I violate you when you are me? And King wasn't. King was seeking much more than resolution to the problem, or even systemic change. He was seeking reconciliation, a deeper level of forgiveness, where the transformation is then complete. And this is largely misunderstood in the way that our approaches to advocacy, and make you wrong and then blame you and attack you, which is also how we treat ourselves. We make wrong the parts of ourselves that we want to disown or are ashamed of, and then we try to get rid of them, fix them, eliminate them. Doesn't work. And so this level of nonviolence that we're talking about, and real love, as we are fiercely in relationship with difficult issues, that's the high water mark. That's the gold standard. And so I'm deeply grateful to people of other cultures that have really laid it out.
Over and over and over again in the wisdom traditions.
Yeah.
I mean, we have more in common than we have in separateness. as that all plays and right at the heart of this. There is no other way. I mean,
It's the only way through the craziness we're in.
it is the only way.
It's the only way through. Anything less won't work. And we can see it's not working. We're just actually ramping down, spiraling down. We
Bob,
didn't
you make
even get to the fact that, the opposite of this is critical.
Well, there
And
was,
critical is
yeah.
tells the truth, but
Don't
doesn't.
start, Bob. That's where it was. So, the opposite side of high critical or critical, and when you look at courageous authenticity, there is such a beautiful contrast and difficult contrast in what one accomplishes and what the other accomplishes. The exact opposite. The exact opposite of what we want is what we get when we're in the high arrogance.
High arrogance and critical. High critical is telling the truth without the heart. It's a protected heart. Heart's closed, and it's often got a lot of blame and projection in it. It makes you the problem. It's make wrong, as opposed to no finger pointing here. Let's just talk about what's going on. Here's my part of it. Here's the part of it I see you playing. Let's talk. It's a very different conversation.
Sincerely, my focus in courageous authenticity is the best interest of you.
Yeah.
What I care about here is the best interest of you. In high critical, what I care about is staying safe, being protected, and blaming you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there's a little bit of a contrast. Let's try that in relationship.
Make wrong and fix you. Make wrong and try to correct you.
Wow, you'd be great if you change.
We'd be great if you'd change.
Everybody would be. Okay, I digress.